Well, hello everyone. Welcome to McDuff Lives. I'm John O'Loughlin, and I'll introduce you to our panel tonight. Carol M., Tara, and Amber are back. They are collectively known as Protecting the Nest. And I just love to get back with you guys because we've been together in many ways over the years. And yeah, hey, cheers. Here's my Screaming
Yeah,
Ospreys mug.
yeah, I got an Osprey too there. I
Cool.
think
Hey,
that's Andy's
cheers,
version.
man.
Mhm.
Cheers.
All right,
Cheers and
drinking
sweet
my
Sometimes.
darkness.
ginger beer tea, of course.
Oh
And
yeah, classic John.
that's me. Yeah. Well, classic Tara, it's good to have you and Amber and Carol. And geez, it's starting to get chilly outside. My zinnias, I never grew zinnias before,
Oh,
but you
they're
guys were talking
beautiful.
about gardening before the show, and I planted a bunch early this spring. They didn't come up for the longest time, and then when they did show up, it was like these little bitty leaves that were like, oh, okay, maybe that's something, maybe it's not. And then boom, they just started to be just huge, 3 foot long stalks with all 10 or 12 big flowers on them. And well, they're starting to get a little chilly out there. How are things where you all are?
It's great. We're in a season where we can actually grow kale, mustard greens, collard greens, carrots, spinach, and some lettuces. You just have to move. We do them on our deck, so we move it around for the sun. And if it gets super cold, we bundle them together. We just put burlap at the base of the containers, and they perk right back up the next morning. If we know it's going to be like a hard freeze and a snow, we'll just lay a tarp, like a side tent, like a I forget what they call it, a lean-to,
Hmm.
and we just kind of have it go down, and then in the morning when the sun comes up, we remove it, and we can grow veggies, just only particular ones, and any tomato that has an Arctic name, that sounds like it can withstand a little hardier weather. So we can grow pretty much throughout the winter.
I'm so glad to talk to you about this because honestly, I guess it was when we first bought the house in '06. I was all excited about having a yard, and I was reading about the Indians tradition and the corn with the beans and the squash, and so I went out in the backyard and plowed up a bunch of it, tore it up uh, with my shovel and my pick, and then I had maybe about 50 nice big corn plants with all kinds of vegetables growing on them, and it was fun. But then I started traveling in the summer when I started doing opera stuff, and I haven't done a garden in all these years. And so we bought some of those raised bed things, so we didn't have to bend over all the time. And I filled them with some dirt, and I started to throw some seeds in there, but nothing, nothing hasn't happened this summer. I was kind of so frustrated, but I know it's just a matter of putting more energy into it and doing it right. Like I'm getting some seed starter sets, for this fall. I mean, maybe February, start some veggies inside instead of just throwing the seeds in the ground and hoping for the best. Anyway, enough out of me. Tara, how about you? You guys are into some gardening, aren't you?
Yeah, and I've learned actually a lot from Dave. We There's definitely no growing outside. That's very lucky. But yeah, what he would say is probably he's learned a lot about living soil, which is instead of having to like feed your plants all the time, you kind of start off with a very um everything the plant needs in the soil.
Hmm.
So he probably would have advice to you. I can't think of what it is particularly right now about certain like kinds of soil and combinations to put in the raised bed.
Yeah.
And but there's also like how the seeds are and where you got them and what the life of that is too. But you're right. I think starting early is key. Before the season, which obviously you guys have even better season than we do. But I remember in January sitting down at the little beach with my, it felt, I could feel the difference anyways. But I feel like for myself anyways, not being that like super structured, I feel like all the talks that we've had has definitely like cued me in and cued us in more than ever to like seasonal awareness. And I think that this winter for us probably will be more of like a spring prep than ever, I
Yeah,
think.
me too. All right, and I know Carol, you know a lot of great stuff to share with us about this subject, but tell us about the weather up there first. I know you're in Oregon. Oh, we can't hear you. Can't hear
Mute.
you.
My dog was whining, so I to put it on mute. Yeah, it's
Oh,
starting
now
to.
we know whose dog that was. Okay.
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
his name?
His name's Fletcher,
All right,
and
Fletcher, calm down.
yeah, yeah. Give me an hour here. Well, it just started to get real nippy at night, so I have some frost, and we can get kale to grow through the winter, but it's a little bit. Sometimes it'll kind of get wilty. It looks cold. It looks like I want to put a muffler on it or something. So I've got some compost I might put around the base and see if that helps because it just looks a little, shriveled up slightly. But they're very hardy. But John, my suggestion to you is grow some red worms in your compost. You can buy them online, and I got the red worm compost this year, and it made a huge difference. I'd never been able to grow stuff like that. But you can just buy the worms for a lot less money. You don't, and you might not be able to get the compost, but you can make it. Just put the worms in there, and they'll start going to town, and it's their poop that is amazing. It makes all the soil fluffy and light, and it's what I think Dave talks about as living soil. That's one of the most important components, is to get something like that, living worms, because not only do they poop and put all this rich digested stuff in there, but they make little holes everywhere so the roots can get in there. And the living soil needs oxygen. You have to have little,
Yeah.
lightness in there for it.
Yeah, that's
So
why
that's
when
my advice. Red
Just
that's
worm.
why
just tell me one thing. Do the little worms suffer any pain?
No, they're happy. They're just totally happy there. And if you dig them, they'll cut in half and make more. Yeah,
Oh,
they love living in your soil. It doesn't hurt them to be
so
what
they'll be
what's
happy
really
worms.
the
It's
reason why it's really important to allow for the oxygen is when when you look at your roots, you've got these little tiny fibrous roots. Those are the little tiny ones are what collects all the water from the soil. And the more your roots had these little fibrous roots that like sprawl out and go down, the stronger it is and the more yield you'll get. If it's closer to the surface, then it's going to dry out easier. It's gonna tip over. It's easier to get root rot. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of these. You need really great drainage, and that's what's so great about not. And when people get their plants, if they get it from they normally will put it in the soil and then push down. Like, no, don't do that. Fluff the soil, set it in there, and just kind of fluff the dirt, like poof around it, and then you can smooth, but don't push down because it causes compaction, and it's really hard for it to find its way and really start growing.
Yeah, I didn't see any worms at the beginning when I put it in, but by the end of the season, any little scoop you pulled out, it was light and fluffy, and you could see a whole bunch of them wiggling around in there. So it was significant how they
It's worm
multiplied.
heaven.
And yeah, it was really wonderful to see. I can't wait to add the biochar this year that I got from the biocomposter.
It's
I know, that's exciting.
Mhm.
I think worms is something that when we were kids we saw all the time. They were just everywhere, and you don't see them as much anymore unless you do go out and turn some soil over. All right, let's get into the subject matter. I was thinking about a few things, but I had a note from Carol saying she really liked the interview that I did with Professor Dolores Cahill of Ireland, who's um, a virologist who went through a whole lot of hazing and censorship and uh, losing her position. A very highly esteemed scientist. Uh, I think she worked at Max Planck for years, but now she's decided to fight this thing on the basis of what she calls natural law. And I was not, when I prepared for the show, expecting to do that subject. I thought she were going to talk about a number of other political things that she was working on. For instance, trying to restore the idea of local banks.
Mhm.
To me, the one of the things that is just the most awful thing is the consolidation of banking into a small cartel of ever more rich um, elite people, and that's not the purpose for which our governments really allow banks. We allow banks in order to produce a better way of living for the citizens of our country, not to send a bunch of money into Swiss bank accounts never to be seen again. So I like her thinking along those lines. But what she is really wanted to talk about was this idea of natural law. Now, what, you're talking to somebody that's invested an awful lot in of time and money and effort in understanding American law and practicing law for, oh, I guess I would say about 30 years. I've been retired now for oh, anyway, let's just say it's been a substantial long time that I practice law, and I enjoy the idea of having laws and systems. And she's also very much in favor of jury trials, which is a big thing for me. I did a lot of jury trials, and I think that's a really great way to find the truth. Again, it's about local people. It's about what happens in a community. That's what you need to vote on. Are you going to vote on what's going to happen in Afghanistan? No, vote on what's going to happen where you live. We'll take care of the local infrastructure and the people. Well, that's my opinion, but nevertheless, Carol, why don't you give us your reaction to Dr. Cahill or Professor Cahill? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said doctor. She prefers professor. Um, and where would you like to take this?
Well, I loved her talking about the ancient law, and I didn't really know anything about Brehon law. And you had mentioned that your family was working on something called the Egerton 88 that I didn't know what that was. So I was really interested in that. But the Brehon law sounds a lot to me like the ethics I learned in my training as a yoga teacher. It's based on doing no harm and acting in honor and I loved her taking it into restoring local accountability, which I think goes into your banking issue as well. Um, she was just also the idea. I went on her website and poked around a little bit, and one of the things that, of course, I love to hear about. There was an organization that was a link there called Fractal Circles. And it's something, I guess it started, I don't know if it was an Irish idea or it started in Europe, I don't know. But it's like you take 6 people and have conversations and come up with ideas, and then you spread it. You just sort of spread it organically. I think we're sort of talking about it as self-organizing structure to get consensus, share ideas. We feel so isolated lately with all this division. But one of the things that really interested me that she said was that this law in Ireland has been there for tens of thousands of years. That was pretty amazing. And I know some of the structures that I saw when I was there, they said were older than the pyramids. New Grange. Have you ever seen that, John? Did you ever go there to some of those standing stones or?
Oh yeah. Well, I actually took a kind of an iconic picture of the Poulnabrone uh, burial stone, which is there in County Clare, not very far from or actually in the O'Loughlin territory historically. The O'Loughlins were the kings of a small part of what is now County Clare. It's the part that borders on Galway Bay, on the south side of Galway Bay, and extends out to the west coast of Ireland. The famous little music town of Doolin is part of it, and the Cliffs of Moher are part of it. So, and then it looks out over the Aran Islands, which historically were part of that same kingdom, but the O'Briens grabbed them in the 1500s, I think, the O'Briens. Anyway, so the O'Loughlins and the O'Briens were rivals for a long time. The short story is the O'Briens took the Queen's coin and signed up with Queen Elizabeth early on, and because they had the support and the numbers, the O'Loughlins eventually had to do the same. All the old kingdoms of Scotland and Ireland had to either disappear or make a deal with the Brits. Well, yeah, Newgrange I have not visited. I've studied it a lot, and it is definitely dated to a couple thousand years BC. The Brehon Law itself, well, of course, it's traditional, and we can't say exactly how long it was, how old it is, but there was a Brehon Law School right there in the O'Loughlin territory, and the
Was it still going? When
it was not, so, no, it was actually a ring fort. It's really ancient,
Oh,
an
really
ancient
ancient
law
stones.
school. So it was.
Wow.
You've seen the pictures of ring forts in Ireland, right?
Mhm.
It's like a
Yeah.
berm, circular, and usually has stones around it, depending upon whether it's a stony area. But that's that's typical Bronze Age defense things, and this goes back many centuries. So yeah, this stuff is very old, and the idea of Brehon law is the law of those Celtic tribes before the conquest by the
Mhm.
English. Yeah, and it's real, and there's documents from the O'Loughlins that's called, this document called Edgerton 88 is a collection of the Brehon laws that were collected for
Oh,
the O'Loughlin chieftain back in whenever it was, long time ago, like 1400, 1500 or something like that.
how were those laws written down? Or were they passed down orally, or was there
Well, it was
rules?
an oral tradition, but this was
Mhm.
written down. This was a project that was done for the O'Loughlin, and it was and there's the old Irish script, and it's in a medieval Irish language that nobody understands anymore. So it takes a
Mhm.
scholar to go back and figure out what it says. But the old Irish script is there. You can Google it, and you can see a picture of a page or two of it online now. And they're putting together some funding to hire some scholars to actually translate it into something that we can learn from, because I think it'll be
Mhm.
fascinating. There's lots of interesting little snippets of Brehon law that you can pick up as you just study Irish culture. Things like if a judge tells a lie, he'll get a red blotch on his cheek. Uh, I don't know if that still applies or not, but look out for a red blotch the next time you hear a judge say something. That kind of thing. One of the things is they didn't have prisons or anything, and if somebody owed you money or anything, you could just go and sit out in front of their door, and everybody in the community will know why, and it shames them, and so so
Mm.
somehow they come up with the money just out of being shamed. There's a lot of shaming going on back then,
Yeah, I
but it's
think there's too much now, though. We got into that a little bit, and it wasn't a good direction, I didn't think.
yeah. No, but the Irish, one of the things of one of the great writers over there, which I happen to know, P.J. Curtis, once said that resentment is the Irish national sport. So it's a
That's cute.
it's a small country. and all
Well,
the
I
time.
but
Oh, it's like
when
it's
I
like Italy, the old, way back, the further back you go, the more they used to fight. They used to, that's what do you think they had those
mhm.
shillelaghs for? They'd go out and whack each other, didn't, you know, and the whole village would go out and fight too, and not just the men, but the women too. You know, they'd have
Well,
what they
she
call
Oh
also
yeah.
mentioned something that was interesting, that it took 10 or 20 years to learn. So it's not simple. It's not just simple rules, it sounds like. And it sounds like she studied it quite a bit.
yeah.
Maybe some of it is taught if you go to law school in Ireland. I mean, she went to law school in Ireland fairly recently, right? She went back to law school as part of what she was talking about.
That's what she said. But let's look at the subject matter for a second. Natural law. In in my sense of my sense of history and what I've studied, it doesn't work. You know, if you've got more stuff than I've got, and I'm hungry, I'm going to figure out a way to get some of your stuff because I don't want to die. And so I'd have to go over to you and say, "Oh, please, Carol, can I have some of your stuff?" And you'd say, "Are you kidding me? I got 10 kids to feed and there's no way I could give this up. This is all that I got and I'm not giving you nothing." And I'll have to go around and beg everywhere I can. And then eventually I'm going to get so hungry that I'm going to sneak up on somebody and steal that pie off of their window while it's cooling, and I'll say, "Oh, I can't help it. It smells so good." And I'll steal that pie. And then the sheriff will come along and they'll say, "Oh, you stole that pie. I'm locking you up in the hoosgow." And there I sit, because I was hungry. But if we didn't have those laws, then all the pies would be stolen constantly and nobody would cook them because they'd all get stolen. Excuse
Well,
me for going off too crazy, but you know what I'm saying?
well, she was talking about these laws being including a jury of your peers as being part of it,
Yeah,
and just there's something super wrong with our legal system right now that is so corrupted,
yeah,
and part of it is just how complicated the laws have become, and that all these special interests go in and write these long, long, long laws. And my understanding of natural law is probably really limited, but I think the ancient laws from maybe Scandinavian, I think there's a lot in common with them, but one of them is that you have to have very clear, simple laws that people can understand, that are like written on the walls, so it's easy. And to me, that is like a natural law. A natural law, like the flocks of birds, how do flocks of birds work? They just have really simple things they pay attention to, and then they can all get where they're going together. So I'm thinking of natural law as kind of a metaphor for how life works itself, and that we're all there's a simple set of rules that we just all go by, and we self-assemble ourselves. We start out with two cells, and it all does it without a lot of oversight. It's part of nature to just organize within yourself and in small groups. I think it's just a natural thing. We gravitate together, like the Ospreys. We love to talk to each other. We love to share ideas. We love to compare our different points of view. And that's one of the things that's really great about our self-organization. So how can we have to me, the question is about coming up with solutions to how did we get in this big mess? And the big
I've
part of this big mess is laws.
well,
And
Carol,
yeah,
I'll
go
tell
ahead,
you,
Amber.
I've thought a lot about this, and what dawned on me, and it wasn't until I read the book 1776 by David McCullough, and then I watched the movie or the series. And one thing that stood out more than anything is John Adams is standing on the shore, and some guy gets out of line. People get upset, and they automatically start to tar and feather him. He looks over at them and he says, and it's like you can read his mind. What he's saying is, we left England because of all of these oppressive laws. And we thought when we came here, we wouldn't need any of these laws and we would just be free. And holy cow, we're going to have to come up with something or everyone's going to get tarred and feathered and we have chaos. And we need some laws but we can't go as far as having an oppressive king, having one ruler, and then that ruler declaring who the peasants, who the winners, who the losers, who the royals are, who the lords, who the ladies are, who gets land, who doesn't, who farms for us. But we need to be able to forge our own path. But we also need to make sure that a horde of angry people don't castigate or put to death someone who's innocent. And so we have to have a court and we have to have laws. And I think that's where it stemmed from, is a realization that if you skate to an island, you still have wild beasts. And people can tend to gather together. And even though you have very smart people, depending on their emotion, depending on if they're hangry, hungry, angry, frustrated, they can react in a very ugly way. And before I saw that, I thought, oh yeah, like I don't understand why we have all these laws. What are they for? And I think we've gone overboard, because basic human decency and law comes down to a very simple structure. But then people learn to take advantage of it, and then people do stupid things. Like, why do we have tags on hair dryers that say don't get near water? Because somebody put the hair dryer in water and electrocuted themselves. So I mean, we have these issues that not everybody is on the same wavelength, not everybody has the same intelligence, but they shouldn't be punished for that. There should be love and tenderness and understanding, but there should also be a bit of a sternness, because innocent lives are in the balance. And you have children who can get, really their innocence taken away early, all because, if I want to hope that everybody will do the right thing because I would do the right thing, then I'm going to be smacked in the face like John Adams when he turned around and he saw the guy getting tarred and feathered and everyone screaming for the death and other people trying to save him. And you just had this realization of, we don't need to go as far as the monarchy and as far as being ruled by a theocracy or a dictatorship, but we sure as heck do need laws, and they can't be corrupt, and we can't allow for elected officials to break the very laws that they say we should follow, where we're punished. And then they use their status, because then we're right back at the monarchy, where I do no wrong, do as I say, not as I do. What's okay for me is not okay for you. That's a class system.
And that's the rules-based order. And I think we got into a lot of trouble shifting from, something that was clear to something that changes all the time, and nobody can make any sense of it, and there's no accountability.
Yes.
So we need something that has accountability. And I think this idea of small groups and jury of your peers as a basis, and then, which we already have, but it's been so twisted with the giant 1,000-page laws that nobody can understand.
Yeah. And the jargon, the linguistic talk over everybody's jargon. And then we expect someone who is going to public school, which are purposely there to make people stupid. They're not trying to enhance children. They're not teaching them the Socratic method. They're not having them read classical books. They're not allowing them to find out who they are and find their creativity and allow them to be their best self. They're teaching them just to be a follower and a worker. And in that, you're going to have a large group of people that all it takes is someone on the news media to say something that's not factual, and they actually believe it. And then they go out on the street ready to hit anybody who's innocent, because now everybody's the boogeyman, all because the man on the TV told them so, because they weren't educated enough to know when they're being fooled.
Absolutely. Well said.
Well, I just want to say one thing about natural law. I think of it kind of like water. Like, it's going to take the simplest path, and it is the simplest thing, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't go everywhere into like pipes or like a pooled area. You know what I mean? So the natural law doesn't have to stay simple. It doesn't have to stay wild, but it does turn into like, okay, I'm going to build a house for my family. Okay, my community is going to, police itself and understand who the policemen are and who the citizens are. My charity is going to begin at home, where I can see or at least understand where it's going, because people have to understand, the more middlemen are, the more less it gets to where you're trying to get it to, so if we can craft our laws after things that make sense, like water, like the simpleness, then we can go by the natural law, but not be opposed to, like, organized whatever we have to do to function highly together in society.
You know, you remind me of books of a book I have of the earliest Maryland trials. And
Mhm.
back in those days, wasn't very often that you had a judge. They would travel around, but and so court was only held once or twice a year. But when you had court, you had your trials, and there wasn't any postponements. There wasn't any appeals. There wasn't anything but whatever that jury said at the end of that trial. And there was hardly any rules. There was like, I could slander the person on the witness stand. I could tell, I could swear, and, I could tell all kinds of lies. It doesn't matter what I said as an advocate, or the parties themselves could say whatever they wanted to say. The whole community would be watching the trial. And so it's like this boxing match of verbal assaults back and forth, in which when it's over, it's over. And that's it. And it's done. And so, what's going to happen? Well, maybe the person will be locked up for a while. Maybe they'll get banished. They might get banished from the province of Maryland, or have to pay 1,000 pounds of tobacco, because they didn't have cash. They had big casks of tobacco that they rolled around to pay off their debts. Anyway, that simplicity and the involvement of the community and the spectators is also part of it. It's like a sporting event in a way, to have the court day. And I guess there's two ways to look at it. Once, there's probably more violations of a person's rights than you can count. But on the other hand, uh, everybody's seeing it. It's right out in the open. And I like to quote a friend, a Muslim friend, who told me that the principle from the Quran is that truth stands clear from error. And you know, hopefully that jury back in 1649, that was judging that lady for uh, whatever she was supposed to have done, would have had that kind of discernment.
Yeah.
I I like the idea of getting back to a lot of jury trials, but don't let it last 2, 3, 4, 5,
Mhm.
10 years. I mean, I've been
Yeah.
involved in cases that lasted 10 years, and
Well,
it's crazy.
one
It
thing
is.
that I think what develops laws is the cause and effect reaction. So you had it going well, and then you had the Salem witch trials, in which a couple of kids felt fervor, shame, and they came and said these group of people were doing these things, and it didn't matter if the woman was able to quote the Bible, was able to, and everyone knew this woman is going to church, taking care of her husband, like she had not done any of that. That jury, because of the fervor, because of what was going on, got carried away, and everyone decided this person should hang.
Hmm.
And this has happened, where um I think then that's why you have that, and then you have the effect of more strict laws so that doesn't happen. And then more laws so that doesn't happen. So every time there's malfeasance, or every time there's an injustice, or every time a martyr is made, or every time something bad happens, then they institute an extra law, which is you have to have two witnesses, or then you have to have this, then you have to have this. And then people learn to take advantage of that, because you're always going to have that group. And so, because we're human and we're totally fallible, we keep piling on more and more things as a reaction to the dysfunction, rather than reviewing what it is we did wrong, which was take the word of two children without drilling in on what they were saying, analyzing each area, speaking to everyone without making them fear, not having such a severe punishment to where people were willing to say whatever it took to not get in trouble, and then use that against them because you forced them into admitting to something that they were afraid not to admit to. It's the tactics and the ways to get that guilty thing rather than actually investigate, to actually see if there is a there. And I think instead they just make these mistakes. We're human, we get all carried away. This thing happens, then here's this reaction, then we need to figure it out, so we add more to it and we add more to it, and then we get where we are today. And instead of like, it's like we don't take that moment to say, this is where we went wrong, we can't do that again. In fact, this is the way we need to handle it this time, without tacking on something different each time, where it's just hard to follow. And then people just get worn down by it and say, well, it doesn't matter what I do anyway. Especially during Jim Crow times and other times, it's like, well, if I'm hated anyway, or if I can't do this anyway, I'm just going to do this. So regardless, whenever, like right now, there's a large portion of America that feels like they're not being heard, they're being censored. So we have to make sure that if we're being censored, we don't add so many laws on top of that to overreact to it and then later regret that thing. So instead of like adding stuff to it, we should be subtracting things away from it and doing it in a very calm manner to explain to the other group that right now it may be us feeling censored, but you turn around in a minute, it might be you. And I'll be here for you and I'll listen, but you have to understand it's a very painful experience to know that you have something to share. And there's a group of people that's telling you, you don't get to share your facts. Your facts aren't facts. What you're experiencing, you're not experiencing, and you get gaslit just by your own experiences. And so that's what I hope doesn't happen, is that after we're dealing with such just breaking of every constitutional, right that we have, everything has been turned upside down. Hopefully that doesn't cause us to just keep piling on more and more in reaction to, and I think that's always the plan with a few people, is to cause it to become more complicated, take away more powers from us. As we think we're getting more powers, we're actually instituting things that actually give us less freedom.
Well, I just want to say real quick that those people, I forgot to say, the natural law really, the people that try to gather together and creep us all out, natural law doesn't favor them. So that's why they have to pull the tactics and the S show that they do.
Yeah, it's true.
I just wanted to follow up on that. And Tara, I'm sure you have heard of like Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and all that stuff. Well, that's not our government. These are organized world fascists that want to take over everything, including the government, so that the government is just like an administrative body that works for the corporations, and the rest of us are just serfs or pawns or useless eaters. And so we have to do something about that. In other words, I think we need some laws to protect us against these fascist corporations. Tara, what are your thoughts?
I do, and I think that the globalist agenda, like, it's so, like, those old cartoons like Pinky and the Brain, they want to take over the world. Like, no, they really do. And when you realize that, you just, I continue to have a strong amount of faith throughout this whole thing. I know that we have all gotten so strong, and not just as individuals. We talk about the groups and everything, and so it's just, I guess it's that fearlessness of the warrior. And it's probably a Chinese cookie or something that says that courage isn't the lack of fear, it's the mastery of it. And so that's why, in the face of the most horrific situations, we really need to minimize these creeps into, you know, these little petty tyrants and just like shrink them down and be like, I know you want to do your little toxic stuff, but sorry, we're all, there's more of us, and your story is going to be really amazing for the ages when we tell it, but you're just not going to win this thing, because they are so used of the hubris is so insane, you know, that it's like, I think waves of people are seeing it every day, and
Yeah.
you know, that's not a small thing.
Hubris. Yeah, we see it, and the more people that see it is. I I've been following Mark Kulak at Housatonic Live very closely lately, and he has been on fire,
Mm-hmm.
going into the history of remdesivir and the way that it's been marketed or foisted upon us in other ways. And what he's suggesting that you know this is biowarfare, and it is them, the ones that want to take over the world, that would be the first suspect on my list. Say it's them. And I I'm still baffled as to how it is possible that all of my progressive, liberal, good-hearted friends just can't imagine that they really are trying to take over the world. But they are, folks. They're trying to take over the world.
John,
Yeah.
I'll tell you something that I noticed. So I've made sure to attend a bunch of events with different types of people. Just last night, I went to an event where I would say it's the furthest left that you could actually get. Like, they don't believe in jails at all. Like, nobody does anything wrong, and all the homeless, there's no issue. We just need to, no one's doing their job, and nobody's doing anything wrong, just the people who aren't helping the people. And it's very utopian. None of them are happy. And then when I go to an event that's on the right, none of them are happy. And then I go to an event that's supposed to be more of establishment, none of them are happy. So everyone's being fed something through their news stream that's a different algorithm, and they feel the same way we do, but they're seeing it from the perspective that scares them and makes them feel like everybody else is suppressing them, oppressing them, and they don't feel happy. And something else I noticed, I did a post about people in my family that have served in the military. Do you know this is the first year that I only got 15 people to like it? Because there's an algorithm that, and I looked on everybody else's pages, anybody who showed a picture of their family member, except for maybe 3 or 4 that had been in the military, they only had like 15 likes, 20 likes or whatever. So that was suppressed. So they were actively suppressing people who were honoring people on Veterans Day, so that there were people scrolling through who probably didn't even know it was Veterans Day at all. And so we've got infiltrators that have caused a deep division where everywhere I go, and I've made sure to break out of my bubble and not go where my biases are. And everywhere I go, everyone's sad, and they look defeated, and they look like they're fighting the boogeyman, and the boogeyman has been defined for them. So we're all fighting this boogeyman that's been defined for us, and we think it's our neighbor or our friend, and we think they've lost their mind, but they are being sent literature and things that tell them that it's their neighbor and their friend, and they've lost their mind, and everyone's lonely and everyone's sad. So someone is really playing a number on us. And I call this not only biowarfare, but psychologically traumatizing as many people as possible. It's absolutely disgustingly evil. And we have to find a way to let everybody know, hey, we're all in these different algorithms, and we're all sad because that's the way they want us. They want us sad, depleted, feeling lonely, outnumbered, and they want us all to feel that way. And no one is gathered together having a great time. I've literally been to every type of group. I make sure if I see it and I know people going, I'll go. And everybody's sad. I haven't seen any happiness whatsoever.
Well, I think that the reality is that we're kind of living in a Marvel comic book, and we can't believe it. It's happened pretty quickly, really. I mean, it's been a slow prepare. They've been working on this for a long time. I mean, I think maybe 100 years or something to get ready for this big moment where they, they're at the top of the pyramid and they've got a way to pull the wool over everybody's eyes or kill them or whatever it is they're doing. It feels like a cartoon or a comic book evil masters. And we just have to wake up to that and call their bluff, because it is like the emperor wears no clothes. As soon as you see it, it's like, here's this guy with his Star Wars suit on, and it's just ridiculous. So, but they've done it so insidiously with, not only the different storylines to everybody against themselves, which we've seen over and over again, reading all the books you've read to us, John, and just all the work we've been doing. We see those patterns now just clear as day. So how do we tell that story? I think it works. You tell the story, it starts to dissolve, and now we're almost at that exponential curve where it's just
maybe we make it like a commercial. Maybe we make it like a commercial. Do you feel sad? Do you feel sad because the news you're hearing? Do you know that the friend that you think is against you feels sad too? Do you know that they're given different news than you are? Then you should come and join us and go and gather with people that you think you have nothing in common with to find out what they're being fed in their news feed. And you'll soon find out we're all being manipulated, which is why we're all sad. Again,
you need to do that commercial.
That's good. That's a great commercial
that makes people go, whoa, a 30-second clip.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have, like how the pharma companies convinces, we might have a shake in our kneecap, so we need to go get a fluvoxamine, and it might have 250 side effects, and anal leakage may be one of them, but it's well worth it, and you should probably go get it. And you
ask your doctor.
You need it. So we should probably do our commercials like that. You just take a template and then mimic it. It seems to work really well. So we should.
It's so sad. It's so sad. You have to laugh,
The Saturday Night Live attack.
You're really good at that, Amber. I'm telling you. I think if we could just cut that quarter out of the show here tonight, you got the commercial. All right, Tara, what do you think? You want to be in the commercial?
I was going to say, when Carol was talking and you said, how do we do it? And then I thought through stories. And then the next word out of your mouth was the story. And I think that, and I continue to think that that's what the arts are for, is because the expression can be turned into so many different mediums. And that is really an algorithm breaker unto itself, because AI can't understand memes, or when we have a conversation and we understand each other's body language. There's just so much interconnectedness that the controllers that control the AI actually trick themselves into thinking that they were actually controlling us the way that they're controlling AI. And yeah, they do have people under their spell and stuff, but we're not AI, and we are people. We're spiritual people, and we have an understanding that's beyond what can be explained. We try to do our best to talk about it, but in essence, it's even beyond what we can figure out. And because there's the unknown and there's the unknowable, and the unknown, we are determined to figure it out, and the unknowable we just accept and have faith.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is a con, and I think some of the work, I was in LA this week, digging around in that the Connet case, and going through that, and being with Ospreys and talking about all this stuff. And I think one of the things that kind of emerged when George was there is this idea of a trust operation, and we've heard about it, the Phoenix program, the Gladio. I mean, it's happened over and over and over again. And this happened with the True the Vote people and the vote operation apps, that the people that were funding these operations were on the opposite side of what the people were saying, actually, in the True the Vote situation. It was the Koch brothers funding them and the FBI, and it was a real different thing. But that idea that that the people that you trust are conning you, that it is a little bit helpful, I think, to understand that this has happened over and over, and we just have to wake up and see it. It's like
Yeah.
a fog.
It's like another thing that people are starting to see is that it is the unit party. In other words, we have
Yeah.
we have this Republican image, that all the liberals think, well, all those Republicans are these, nut goobers with rifle racks and KKK flags, but the fact is that most of the power in the Republican Party is bankers and people that are invested in the big military industrial complex and the drug companies and all that stuff. It's not the people that are shamed by the memes of the left, but and then on the Democratic side, even Bernie Sanders, people will admit that the progressive movement is dead in the Democratic. It's dead in the door now, and there's nothing there. But the people, the great, progressive people, they're still out there. They just haven't got any leaders. They haven't got anything that they can do with it. But they're still under the spell that anybody that was on the Republican side is evil. So that we have to break that spell by saying no. Like what I think is going on, at least right here locally, is that the supposed Democrats are more like dinos, and the supposed Republicans are more like rhinos. And so I think, it's just a whole bunch of dinos and rhinos that are competing, to be the system that's going to be used by the next level up, the state government or the big government bank people that are going to say, oh yes, we'll pick these guys. You're going to be Cinderella this year, and then 4 years go by and they're disillusioned and they pick the other side. Well, you guys, we like you now. But they're all fighting for a piece of this same sucking at the same tit, to put it frankly.
Yes.
I like it with the dinos and the rhinos. That's
Yeah,
perfect.
that's kind of great. Well, I think pointing out that the big money, I mean, I noticed, like, say, NPR started getting funded by the Koch brothers and Halbatron. And, I started thinking, what's going on here? And that's the point, that the big money on the left and the big money on the right are causing opposite things to happen than you might think. And I think to reveal that is helpful, perhaps.
Yeah,
Joe,
patterns, follow patterns.
Yeah, like seeing that the Koch brothers were funding the True the Vote guys, and for the Democrats, I think one thing that's starting to unravel is, as they hold everybody accountable to the wokeness, they got mad at the private prisons, and a lot of the big funders were funded by the private prisons, and so they started taking it. They're calling it the ICE detention centers, so the Republicans would feel okay about that. It's just sort of shifting and changing the words and changing what it is, but it's still Auschwitz,
Well,
on one
what I
level.
noticed, Carol, what I noticed that was really sad is, like, there's this group called the Geo Group, and you would think it'd be one
Yeah.
party. You would think it'd be one party, but then when you read it, you're like, well, they donated to Trump. They helped get him elected, but as soon as they started to help get him elected, they decided no, and they started to go with the Democrat ticket before he was even elected. Then they helped to sponsor the Russia. Then they helped to sponsor anyone and everyone on both sides of the aisle. That's the Never Trumpers on the right and the people who said that Trump was Antichrist on the left. And literally, they gave those people money to cause and sabotage and get on the media. And this is a private prison in which they need to stay 90% full in order to give a return on stock value. So you don't have an actual, like, city, county, and state prison where they're dealing with what's
Right.
happened in the state. And if they get out of line or they're unfair or they're breaking the Constitution, the federal government steps in and says, wait a minute, you're taking away constitutional rights, you're being abusive, or blah, 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 blah. Instead, it's this holy entity that when they put Greg Phillips and Catherine Engelbrecht into jail, they said they're in a federal prison. No, they weren't. They're in a private prison that's also used as an ICE detention center. That then
Yeah.
they use those ICE detainees to keep their numbers up to 90%. And then therefore they manufacture goods for cheap labor. And so
Mhm.
you have a lot of these people on both sides of the aisle whose campaigns were funded by this group. And then conveniently, when people found out about it, conveniently their stock goes down 53%, which means, let's see, they're going to rename it. They're going to go for bankrupt. They're going to then open up in a different LLC. They're going to call it a different name, and they're going to keep the facilities the exact
Yeah.
same and not
The
change
name
anything.
stealers. But I think this the FTX thing that's unraveling totally is revealing, a lot of money shenanigans that on the Democratic side. So I think that the whole funding of the election is gonna be
That was
revealed,
the
or it's being
rhinos too.
revealed
I
right
believe
now.
I think the rhinos were just very much so in the know about FTX as well. There's no
Yeah.
way that they weren't. They were like, you've got your Romneyites up there saying we need
Mhm.
to give to Ukraine. And there were people that have family in Ukraine and literally have been in the military and helped Ukraine, to have an affinity for that country and wanted to help them. But if they knew that it was going to be turned into cryptocurrency and then turned around and used to then censor them on YouTube and and
Right.
destroy our military and give people in our country a bad name, they would have never had that affinity, because they would have been like, this is corrupt. I support the
Mhm.
Ukrainian people, but not this corrupt BS that's going on. And so they really just they deceived everybody, and it's very
Yeah.
ugly
And they
and
deceived the
unacceptable.
Ukrainians too. When we were in front of the courthouse, there's a big park, kind of like, the mall in DC. And there one day there was a Ukrainian gathering of people, and they had all the pictures of the atrocities. And I mean, we know it's horrific, but we're not seeing that in the news like we did in Vietnam. All the horrible news. So seeing it, it's just, how could all my friends think that this was a good thing to fund the Ukrainian war with billions of dollars? How
This
did
is
they
why
get
derangement syndrome.
yeah, it's the
TDS is a real
it
thing.
was,
It
was
is
the
a real thing.
derangement syndrome.
It is
It
a
is.
real thing.
And it's Chuck
Mhm.
Schumer and, Jewish people of great persuasive ability that are supporting the Nazis. It's just crazy terror.
Yeah, it's
Well,
insane. It is insane.
it's
Yes,
the way I understand it, it's the Khazarian thing, the
Yeah.
Khazarian
Okay.
who come, and they're just like kind of the subversive group, if historically speaking, where they're like supposedly the fake Jews or whatever. I'm assuming they brought in the Talmud, which is, a perversion compared to what, the Torah and stuff like that. So it's like, in general, people don't, we think one thing, like, oh, Jewish people, that means so
Mhm.
many different things. There's like the banker aspect, there's just like families that have like a religion, but there's also these, these ones that pretend they're other people,
Yeah.
and we can talk about that all night. But I would say, John, that I think that you should do a little Irish jig called the Egerton 88. What is it?
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Egerton, is that the right word?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Egerton.
I guess it's Egerton, right? Yeah.
Egerton. Okay, Egerton.
Yeah. That's a
So
good
why
idea.
not? Yeah, do a little.
Yeah, I love that idea. I'd love to hear it.
And Carol, you can play the drums with me. How about that?
Yeah, I'd love to, John. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I was super excited tonight because I went to my son's first orchestra concert, and he plays the violin. He was so
Oh,
nervous, but they were so cute, all sixth graders, and they're doing pretty good. But it just felt so good. And at the end, they sang "What a Wonderful World It Could Be," and True Colors by Cyndi Lauper. And I started crying,
Beautiful.
especially with What a Wonderful World It Could Be, because some of the little soloists were great. They already have their vibrato and they're finding themselves. And so my son gets embarrassed with singing. So he, will lip sync a little bit of it and sing some of it. I catch him when he's singing in the shower, but if he hears the floor creak, he's quiet because he doesn't want mommy to hear. But he loves violin, and I felt it was so nice and so pleasant to watch him play and really be on the stage and feel like he was in his
Oh,
first
that's
concert.
terrific.
Nice.
Well, I have to zip and go pick up my grandson who's learning how to grapple. He's become a wrestler now. Now the
Oh,
football's
nice.
over. So
Get
All
that
right.
headlock
Good.
going.
Well, listen. Let me just leave you with one thought, which we were talking at the beginning. About the necessity of a government of laws, and John Adams, of course, being in favor of such a government. One of his quotes that has stuck with me is this: "I am a soldier, so that my son can be an engineer, so that his son can be an artist." And I think
that's great.
that's what Tara is saying, is that, we need artists to develop our culture direction. Where are we going? And to address the big
Mhm.
problems and to say, here's how we can fix it. We can fix it, by a musical number, or by a piece of graphic arts, or a video, but it has to be a way to communicate something in an artistic way that perhaps can't even be said in words, but will lead us in the direction that our culture needs to go to stay healthy and peaceful and growing, and not need to go back to that soldier generation ever.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
that I think is the
Past that.
dream of the founding fathers, and
Mhm.
that's I think a nice way to leave it tonight. Let's all work towards that idea of, yeah, we have to fight, but when it's over, we're going to build, and then we're going to create art and be
Yeah.
creative
I
like God
I
wants.
love it. Yes. Thank you, John.
All right, Tara. All
All
right,
right. Thanks, everybody.
everyone in the
What a wonderful world that we
That's
have.
right.
world.
It
Mwah.
will be. It is now too. We'll make it
Thank
so.
you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.